You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at KeeleyCompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the #1 national best-selling author of the book On Fire. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, and he's the host of the Live Inspired podcast. John interviews extraordinary individuals on their life story so that you can wake up from accidental living and more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. Today, we're going to bring on a guest, and when you hear his name, you're probably going to make the mistake of thinking, whoa, this is a political conversation. And whether you are on the left or the right, somewhere in the middle, far left or far right, or you just don't care at all about politics, I actually believe the conversation I'm about to have with this guest is for you. His name is Governor John Kasich. That's right, a governor. Spent a lifetime bringing people together, actually, to tackle difficult problems, guided by a deep belief that we all have a role to play in making the world a little better than the one we found. As former Ohio governor and 4-time New York Times bestselling author, his deep commitment to his faith and to building community, that's what actually matters most to Governor Kasich. Today, John shares why he believes the antidote to our cultural divide is not politics. No, it's not politics. It's purpose. Hear John share about his working class roots, how losing his parents to a drunk driver deepened his faith, and why he believes real change always begins from compassion and faith are quietly transforming to elevate us in our communities across the country. Brothers and sisters, family and friends, my fellow Democrats and my fellow Republicans, if you have felt discouraged by headlines or you're wondering how one person can make a difference, this conversation is for you. You will leave reminded that you matter, your choices ripple, and that faith, when lived boldly and lovingly, can unite, heal, and elevate the world. So my friends, do me a favor, set aside judgment, uncross your arms, and open up your heart to my friend, now yours, his name, Governor John Kasich. John, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
I'm glad to do this, John. Thank you.
So for those who missed my 3.5-minute long, robust introduction of you and why you're joining us today, do me a favor, pretend like you and I bumped into each other in a grocery store, and we both find out our names are John. And then I say, oh, John, nice to meet you. Tell me, what do you do? How would you respond to that these days?
Well, I have a business, and I try to help people through my business. It's a consulting business where we're basically problem solvers, and it's very interesting. We do everything from behavioral health to healthcare to technology. It's a lot of fun to do that. And then I also am television, so you can catch me on MSNBC about 3 times a week. And thinking now about doing a Substack. I speak, I write. It's cool. Nothing's easy. I mean, you have a business, you have to work at it. I mean, but it's all good. It's all good. And so a lot of people think when I left that I sort of retired, and I'm like, no, I mean, actually is almost as busy as I was before, which is good. And my wife told me the other day, they asked Dolly Parton when she was going to retire, and she said, retire, it sounds like rust.
Amen.
She said, why am I going to do that? So things are good. I exercise a lot. I play very poor golf. I've got some great friends, both my age and some much younger. I have a great wife and a couple great kids. And, that's kind of where I am.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time talking about your golf game. I will let you know I played with 2 of my boys this weekend. I don't even play, but those 2 boys lost 27 balls. So we have a little bit of work. We are keeping Titleist gainfully employed and profitable. You guys are welcome for that. So let's go back a few years to your childhood. I married a woman named Beth. and her dad spent a career as a letter carrier. Joe was a great man, raised her well, awesome guy, great father-in-law. You were also raised by a letter carrier. Tell me a little bit about your dad.
Well, he just carried that mail on his back for 27 years, I think. He was the son of a coal miner, and his mother, they were both from we think, somewhere around Czechoslovakia. And my dad, I guess you would say, was someone that always said had a twinkle in his eye. But I'll tell you an interesting story. When I was a kid, I wanted to play Little League Baseball. Now there's weird ways in which you get on the team, but at the time you had a tryout, and I was a little guy and run out in the field and you'd have a number on your back and somebody would write the number down and call you. I never got called, but I was a good baseball player. And I'll prove it to you because uh, I was better than most of the kids that I played ball with at the schoolyard, but I didn't get picked and they did. And I said to my dad one time, I said, "Hey Dad, all my buddies, they're not as good as I am, but their fathers are the coaches or the assistant coaches, or they know somebody. Can you get me on a baseball team?" And he said, "Johnny, the answer to that is no. You'll have to earn it yourself because I don't want to owe anybody anything
Mm.
because I went to bat for you. You can do it. You just have to earn it." And I remember that story, and I was probably 11 years old, 10 or 11. But what happened was some guy saw me playing baseball at the schoolyard. He called a coach and said, "Hey, I just saw this kid. He should be on a team. Maybe he could be on your team." The coach listened. He had a kid on his team that broke his leg. The coach came to see me at my house and said, "We're giving you a uniform. You're playing for us." That's a good story.
You earned it.
I earned it. Yeah, I did. I earned it. And
Well,
that was good.
and that's a lesson your dad taught you, not only carrying that mail all those years, but also reminding you, hey, Johnny, earn it, man, earn it in baseball and in life.
And he was also somebody that said, "I'd be out here walking carrying a mill and it'd be, 100 degrees and nobody would offer me even a glass of water." And I thought about that. We can always offer somebody a little glass of water or something, can't we?
He came home eventually thirsty, skinnier than he left home, tired to your mom, to his
Yeah.
wife. What lessons do you
Well,
carry forward even today about your mom?
my mother was highly opinionated, smarter than a whip, sharp and direct. She was just something else, and they were both great. And as you know, because you probably have read about it, I lost my parents in 1987 to a drunk driver, and while up till then, I sort of had faith. As a young man, I was involved in church activities. That's where I first learned to speak into a microphone and all that back when I was just very young. But it was that moment, and after that moment, that people came around me and asked me to check out my faith in a real way. And that was in 87. That's 13. And so that's 38 years ago. And I'm still checking it out. Somebody said, you have a window of opportunity to go through it to figure out where you are vis-a-vis the big guy. And the window will close at some point.
Yeah.
But if you go through it, you're going to, it will be worth your while. So that's exactly what I did. I don't know, John. It was a good, it's funny. We look at these things that happen and we just never know how they're going to come out. And as we know, one of the most hopeful things that I've ever read, written by a great writer by the name of Helmut Thielicke, is he writes that all things work to the good for those that love God. If you can actually believe that, you know, and that gets to be about faith. And I don't know if you know who Trumper Longman is. He's an Old Testament biblical scholar, one of the best in the world today.
Okay.
A couple other preacher friends of mine were at my house, and I asked them the question. I said, "Hey, how does one get faith?" And they say, "Well, you don't get it from running around as fast as you can or lifting as many weights as you can. I mean, it's not something you try for. God will come to you first,
Right.
and then it will be up to you as to how you respond to that. But if in fact God does send you a message, if you respond to it positively, you can come to have faith where you can actually believe these sayings. And I think these promises or these scriptures, right? I think you can believe them. And man, life is tough, as you know, having gone through what you've gone through. It's tough. You talk to people all the time who suffer incredible woes and really devastating things. And it's very hard for somebody, the father in Texas, who I'm told had his two children washed away in that terrible flood. It's hard to say to him, all things work to the good for those that love God. You can't say that. But I think you and I would both like to think, what does that mean? Where are those kids now? Where can that man find peace? I mean, we don't have these answers, but I just, it's terrible.
It was August 22nd, 1987 for you. Was that the date of your mom?
Yeah, I think that's right. 21st or 22nd.
When things like this happen in life, whether it's the children washing away or the phone call coming in that a drunk driver has killed your parents, many of us, I think, begin to wonder, how could it possibly be that a loving God could be behind any of this? And if that's the question you're asking, and it's not the wrong one at first, I mean, I think it's a reasonable one to ask. It seems also likely that you would push your faith away. And it always surprised me that as your family went through this tragedy, you were drawn into the conversation more, that you wrestled with it more, but came out even more confirmed that it was real. Would you just, I wasn't planning on asking you about that, but I think it's an important piece. Why do you think that happened?
Well, when it happened, my worst fear was when I was a kid that my father would have to go pick my mother up because she actually worked in the downtown post office sorting mail. And I was always worried they weren't going to make it home one night and they would be killed in a car accident. Yeah. So when it happened, it was so bad. And I remember my entire world was black.
Yeah.
With a little speck of light. And you probably can relate to that. With a little speck of light. I give the credit to God, but I give the credit to these pals of mine who they just came around me. Sometimes we need to just go around people. I talk too much, John, and we learned from Job that, why don't you just shut up and be there? But these guys came around and they're my dearest friends today. I just thought that it made sense to go check this stuff out. Because the preacher that came into the hospital said, he's trying to comfort me. I said, you don't understand. He goes, no, I don't understand, but there's one thing I do know, because my mother was a believer. He said to me, I know this, if your mother could come back, she wouldn't. That was a powerful, I'm sure that was sent to him, but I'm so glad that I did it. And we all have a fear that we're not in control. We don't know what the world's going to give us. I think sometimes we just got to hang on.
Yeah. Beautiful. I appreciate you shutting up for a moment, listening, and continually moving forward. It's a remarkable story from that. I'm going to take you back in time to when your mom and dad were still alive. You're at the Ohio State University. You wrote a letter to the President of the United States. You wrote a letter about some of the challenges we face as a nation. Do you remember what some of the challenges we face as a nation?
No, I don't. I know. Here's what happened. I was living at Ohio State in a big dormitory with 48,000 students, and something happened. It bothered me. I demanded a meeting with the president of the university, and they delayed it. I finally went in. I met with him. I asked him some questions, and I said, maybe this job you have is a job for me. I was first quarter freshman, 18. And he told me he was going to go see the president the next day. And I said, there's a number of things I'd like to talk to him about also. Could I go with you? And he said, no. I went back to my dorm and I wrote a letter, signed it, critiquing. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said, if you find the letter interesting and you'd like to discuss it more, let me know. I've got time on my hands, And so they wrote back and invited me to the White House in an Oval Office meeting, which my parents couldn't believe was happening. I went down there and they said, you get 5 minutes alone with the president. I'm like, I got a new jacket, new shirt, new pants, new tie. I'm not coming out in 5 lousy minutes. But I opened up the door and I spent 20 minutes in the Oval Office at 18. It was pretty remarkable. And I like that story because it just tells people anything's possible. You never know.
Did you have a political itch before then? Did you think you may?
Well, my mother was so opinionated and very outspoken, and I sort of had an interest in public affairs. I'll tell you a funny story. I've never told this before. That my mother and I used to listen to talk radio, back in the old days when it was legitimate. And one time she was listening and there was a spirited argument going on. And she went to find me. We had two phones in our house, one in the kitchen and one in the bedroom, their bedroom. And she came trying to find me to tell me to turn on the radio to listen to this. And she came in the bedroom and it was me on the phone. So I guess it was always there. I wanted to be a lawyer, but things just went a different direction. And what can I tell you? It was just pretty remarkable. And my parents were extremely proud. My mother always worried about that I would get into trouble somehow, which probably always made me slightly paranoid, which always served me well. And my father would be in my hometown here standing on the corner saying, "Do you know who my son is?" So it was really
So talk about that. You started your political career in Ohio. That's where you
right.
lived out for 40 years. Why not move back to Pennsylvania?
Oh, I was never going back. I mean, I loved going to Ohio State. It got me out of that place over there. And I would say is a little bit more sophisticated here. It was people were waspy. They weren't, telling people that their shirts were ugly or that I don't know. It just I just settled in here and never ever thought about going back. And I'm glad I didn't go back. And it just was a natural thing for me to stay.
At 26, I was probably sleeping on somebody's couch, trying to figure out what I might do when I grew up, and I'd figure it out partially
Yeah,
10 years later. At 26,
right.
what were you doing?
People say to me, well, tell me how I can get to be like what you were. And I said, well, you got to understand, I made the NBA. There are not many people that make the NBA. So I got this interview at the White House. The next summer or 2 summers later, I was working at the National Institutes of Health in DC. They called me up, offered me a job. I went down, I did that. I would hitchhike to the ocean every weekend. Guy picked me up who used to work for JFK and LBJ. I got his phone number. I got to build a relationship with him. I worked with him the next summer. I graduate from college a little bit late. I was going to go to law school. I went looking for a job. I couldn't find one. I walked into the legislature, which was the last place I thought I could ever get hired. A guy out of the blue said, "You could come in here and write resolutions about grandmas that turn 100. The next day I show up. He says, "There's an opening up in the legislature to be an aide. Why don't you go and interview?" I did. I got the job. I worked there a couple years and thought I can do this job as well as they are. So I quit my job and I spent a couple years running and then got elected as the youngest ever in Ohio history to the Ohio Senate. Did that for 4 years. They took my district away from me through gerrymandering. I ran for Congress and got elected. I was 30 years old. I'm headed to Washington. I mean, it's just like one thing after another. And I got to believe in some sense, God had his hand on me to do what? I don't know. I expanded Medicaid, which provided coverage for 600,000 people that didn't have good health care or mental health care. And, I look at all that and say, I don't know. I don't know. I can't figure it out. I resent it when people say, "Oh, well, God gave me that job." Somehow his hand was somewhere and I don't know. I just don't have an answer other than I'm grateful.
From those, I think you served 8 additional terms.
I was 9 terms in Washington. Yeah. Then
Right.
I became chairman of the budget committee and I was on the defense committee. It was great. And then I quit.
Is there from that, that's a long run and it's not over yet, but from that long run, was there a moment that you look back on and you're like, man, maybe I was there for this thing, this one moment?
You mean when I look back now? No, I don't know. I can't answer that. I think more when I think about being governor. I think that the way I treated those who lived in the shadows, I mean, I'm really proud of that. I had great people. I had great people around. I was just trying to do a good job anywhere I was. I was not a political guy. I mean, I'm a Republican, but that was never, as I like to say, it was my vehicle, not my master. John, it's just trying to be the best I could be at helping people, frankly. But I'll also say, I'm a hypocrite and a fraud too, which I think we all are.
It was my vehicle, not my master, was a
That's
quote
my political party. Yeah.
you used a moment ago. It has become our master, not our vehicle.
Well, it's disgraceful what's happening in the political arena today. That's why, frankly, it's why I wrote this book. And I know this is not a segue to get into the book, but I wrote the book because, John, I've always believed that the power comes from the bottom up, and it's the public that pushes things up. to where the politicians are. And there's two things that I think, I mean, a number of things, but two things. One is people working together at the local level to solve serious problems brings us together as human beings.
Always.
And the second thing I really worry about in terms of the loss of faith or the demeaning of religion, or even some who so-called believers who practice it in really pitiful ways, we are operating in a world where we have no objective truth. When everybody has got subjective truth, that creates chaos. There's no rules. There's no restraints. There's no limits. It was funny. I was just talking to somebody about, well, we were kind of chuckling about the kiss cam, about that and what happened. But I was saying how a lot of people, they think this is great that these people have been hurt and, all that. I mean, what they were doing. I mean, you and I wouldn't be getting on a kiss cam. I don't think so. But where's the restraint? Because somebody was also saying to me, well, when you take a look at what gets posted on the internet and how people can be anonymous and how they can just say mean things, I said, well, wait a minute. Character is what you do when no one's watching. But why are these people not restrained? And that's why I say I'm a hypocrite, because I'm just a jerk like everybody else. It's just that I know that I have repentance. Hopefully I use it. And secondly, I know that I got tomorrow. At least I think I do.
So the kiss cam showed up on that couple for 3 seconds and changed their world.
Right.
And now everybody's just jumping on top, man, beating them up. The kiss cam was on you for decades. Everything you did was tracked and followed and sometimes celebrated, frequently mocked. What was it like being a husband and a father when everything you do is under the bright eye of the kiss cam?
John, let me ask you a question. Do I seem any different talking to you than you've ever seen me?
No, I'm waiting for I'm waiting for you to take off the disguise, but I'm feeling the same character that I've read about.
Right. I mean, it's how do I feel? Like, the one thing I always wanted to avoid was, scandal, right? I always, that harkens back to my mother. So I always, kind of really stayed away and put barriers up. But in terms of my family, well, when I was governor, we didn't live in the governor's house. We lived at our home. One of my daughters said, Mom, can you get those policemen out of our driveway all the time? She said, no. One time a boy was coming down to ask one of my daughters out for a prom or something, and a patrolman got out of the car and said, what do you want here? Well, I want to ask Emma or Reese out for this date. And the guy goes, she doesn't want to say yes, get lost. He drove off.
You trained him well, Governor.
But we didn't really spend a lot of time talking. I don't take my work home. Even now, I don't really take my work home. But they had a lot of exposure, and it's something that I didn't realize, that there were things that affected them that I think was not positive, but I think it was minimized because of my wife. And thank the Lord, they're doing great. They know the Lord. They went to Christian school. It wasn't always easy there. It wasn't always open, and that's the negative side of it. But they did get a sense of the Lord, which they practice to this very day. That was not anything that I hid anywhere. I don't know. I just didn't have, it was great. Let it all hang out. It's easy to say now, but if you don't like me, then put somebody else in and I'll get on with my life. And I'm not sure I actually thought that, but now I look back and I just let it go. Be who you are. Don't be trapped by a political party or a philosophy or a party philosophy. I have a philosophy, but don't be thinking you're going to pressure me into something.
As a man who lived in the political theater forever, 40 years plus, how do you, when you're in a position of leadership, make a decision between what is popular and will keep you in the room where it happens and what is right and might lead you to exiting stage right?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're saying is how do you balance what the public may be yelling at you about and what you think is right? I think you owe people your judgment. You're not there to be a poll taker, but you got to be aware of what they want. And that's what leadership is, the willingness to walk a lonely road. John, I think when you operate and you have a degree of toughness and people around you who can advise you, but at the end, it's your decision. And walking a lonely road is, it's cool. And, you know, a lot of people in this book walked a lonely road. And that's why I told them to get to a faith institution, because there they would have some psychological support, some material support.
Right.
But, you know, I just always use my conscience really as my guide. I would say this, having come through 1987 in particular, I not only worked on my faith, but I worked on really trying to understand who John Kasich was. And I'm
Mm.
kind of free, John. You know what happened today? I was going to the grocery store and there was a guy, as I was pulling in, he had a shopping cart and he was pushing the shopping cart and riding on it into its place. And I went over to his car. I could see his wife. I could see him. I didn't know who was in the back seat. And I said to him, I was once told by somebody, in order to stay young, you never let the little boy inside die. And he wound down his window, and there were his three children. It was great. And I got to talk to his kid. It was just great. So if you don't let the little kid die, and at times I do,
Right.
um, you know, you can have fun. And I kind of had fun, teased around, but took my job very seriously, but not myself. Yeah, I took myself probably too seriously too. What am I talking about?
One final question on politics before
Yeah.
we jump into the book, Heaven Help Us. What would you say to young folks today on both sides of the aisle and on every side of every issue that are thinking about moving into politics, but they also have some concerns
No,
about,
you got to go into it because you want to change the world. And it's not changing the world based on some political nonsense. Change the world. If you see people who are hungry, what are you going to do about it? If you see wars breaking out, what are you going to do about it? I mean, you go into it because there's something you really want to do. And if that's not the reason to go into it, then you shouldn't go into it.
so you said there may
And
be collateral damage in your personal walk, but it's worth it if you're going to redeem and make better the world.
well, and I also tell young people, go do something, make something of yourself, get a little money before you can always run later. But if that's where you are, what are you going to do? Nobody was going to talk me out of it. So I mean, it was just crazy. I remember telling my friends, I said, I'm going to run for the state senate against a guy who has an aide I'm looking at across the room. And they thought it was crazy. But, you know, one thing led to another and it just had happened. And I think the reason why I was so free was because it was the people, the public, and, you know, just everyday folks that helped me to get elected to these jobs. And so very cool.
You wrote a book called Heaven Helps Us. I read it this week, and the title of it alone seems like a mixture between a plea and a prayer.
People say that, and I love the title. It just came to me out of the blue. And it's two ways of looking at it. Oh, heaven help us, like, you know, the roof's falling in, or hey, heaven help us. And that's the way I've always thought of it. And it's a great title, though. It's even the book's not good. The title's good. You know, I wrote it because I was trying to initially give these preachers who were under pressure to get involved in politics something to stand on. And I got these theologians together and we couldn't agree to one sentence. So my friend said, why don't you write a book? And so I wrote this. This is my second faith book. My first one was called Every Other Monday.
Yeah.
This one's had a slow burn, but John, I'm told it's really starting to catch on now, which is really, really great. And here's the thing that I want people to know. And my first book was called Courage is Contagious, which was about individuals doing remarkable things. Today I was struck because this issue of autism is a tough one. There are parents sometimes that are most of the time, probably worried about what's going to happen to their son or daughter as they age and the child ages. Where do they go? And one of the chapters here is about a woman who created some group homes for people that, you know, have to worry about her son anymore because he's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I look at that and I say, and there's a lady here in my hometown who's really having a hard time with all this. And I told her, just read the chapter. And I said, do you go to church? And she didn't really answer. I said, well, if you don't go to church, go find one and tell them you need help creating group homes here. And if they tell you they can't help you, then go find another church.
Yeah.
I mean, people just know that if they have a passion about something, human trafficking, poverty, homelessness, hunger, literacy, man, you can change the world. Don't doubt yourself. If you got a noble cause, do not give up on it. And you might say, well, I'm a nobody. You know, it's the weakness of the book is I didn't define exactly the steps that they should go through. I thought it was implied pretty simply, but I guess it's hard.
I read it differently. I don't think there is a series of steps. The series of steps is saying yes to the next best opportunity. When you look through all 15 of the examples given, none of them followed the same process. It was seeing an issue and stepping toward it and taking the next step and then the next one and the next one and
Yeah.
then back. And it's like, my gosh, we've changed this thing for better.
Did you like the book?
Very much so. What it does, the work we do around here, Governor, is about reminding people they have agency to make a difference in their backyard. Everyone else is waiting for the White House or Columbus or Jefferson City. And the reality is, that's part of it, how it gets done. But undoubtedly, the work that really needs to get done takes place in our own backyards with people who frequently are neighbors of ours. And that's what your book celebrates. And it's
Well, yeah.
on the heels of adversity.
Well, think of it this way. If the Secretary of State and your trash man went on vacation, who would you miss the most?
Well, I know my trash man's name, so I'm going to start there. So,
but
and I give him Christmas presents.
John, you know what I'm saying. What my father would appreciate that. Now, one of the interesting things is that each one of these people has something that they feel strongly about. And it is putting one foot in front of the other. But what I like about using the institutions of the church or the institution of the synagogue or the mosque is you're not alone.
All right.
You got other people there that can help you. Right?
So your first chapter, your first and final chapter, one begins in a church, one ends in a synagogue. So very different settings. And in some regards, similar outcomes, though, for good on the heels of tragedy. Let's begin with Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, everybody knows the story, okay? But you imagine that a gunman goes in and shoots all your people for no reason because he's a racist. And these people go into a court process and say they forgive the shooter. I mean, we got families that can't say they're sorry to one another. And I think this issue of forgiveness is a really important issue.
Yes.
I think it's just a remarkable story. And it's like maybe we could think for a second about that brother that we don't forgive because he's mad at us because he took care of mom more than we did and he called us out on it or whatever. I mean, it goes on all the time. The last chapter, which is about the shooting at the Tree of Life, is just another story that just like hit me. I remember when it happened, I was visiting my daughter at college and it's when it all came out, and it was like one of those things. I just remember exactly where I was, where I heard about it. And Tree of Life is so close to where I grew up in Pittsburgh. And that is about kind of remembrance. There were so many things. We had a place where the Muslim community did a GoFundMe to help the synagogue. The Abrahamic culture, which is what I'm really celebrating in a way in this book. And these pictures that came, and kids drew stuff for the people at the synagogue, and it just was amazing. And so that's why those two, they were bookends. It kind of two different stories from what the rest of the book is about, but not in a way. We couldn't get anybody at the Tree of Life to step up and say that they had been a leader. We couldn't get anybody to say it. They wouldn't do it. And there were people raising money. There were people doing all kinds of, nobody would, because they didn't want, I think none of them wanted to claim any credit. And then this great story in here, John, about this man that has this dream, right? Let me ask you a question. Do you dream in color or black and white?
I feel like it's more gray than color.
Yeah, I think that's with me too. I heard this the other day. I was thinking about it myself. But this guy, no, he's in Omaha, Nebraska, has a dream and won't tell anybody. And 15 years later, he realizes the dream by bringing a church, a synagogue, and a mosque on a plot of land together in Omaha, Nebraska to learn from one another and talk to one another. all based on a dream. Now, this guy, he was a lawyer. He was a big guy in the synagogue, so he had sway. And I found out about him from Susie Buffett because I was at a U2 concert where I'd become friends with Bono and helped him in the early days of trying to do debt forgiveness. And here I am with Susie Buffett, who tells me about this guy in Omaha. And the next thing I know, we got him in the book. Cool.
It is cool. In fact, let's go through some of the cool stories. There's a quote from a gentleman named Eric Manning. He's a pastor. His first day of work is 5 days or so after the shooting in his church. He's now the pastor in this
Right.
church. And his first sentence out of the box is this: I don't know how to lead you. And then there's this pause. And then he adds, but God knows how to lead us.
Exactly. That was a good one because trying to get, and I got to him, first of all, I guess being in Congress and a number of those people getting to know me, they had respect for what I was trying to do and who I was back in the old days, And I think it carried over to where it created trust for me to be able to have an intimate conversation with Pastor Manning. Yeah, what a guy. And they're building a memorial. Incredible what that guy did. Incredible.
Tell us about Hal. Well, and before we talk about Hal Donaldson, the forgiveness story that takes place in the church, one of the things that moved me most about it is the killer, this murder of 9 of the family members, never once even whispered or pretended like he was sorry. And yet here these victims and these victim families are looking out one after another and saying, I forgive you. You can't steal our future. You took our family member. You may not steal, though, our heart.
Yeah, it's not been easy. It's not been easy for them. And I think there have been moments, if you read it carefully, there have been moments where they wondered about what they did, but they've always comes back to they did the right thing. It's not easy to forgive somebody that comes in and just shoots, your most precious. But they did it, and it's a shining example. And, to me, it's the power of faith in a community sometimes that people just don't understand. And these are not people that have power or money or influence, but they have something more important than all of that, and that is they have a rock solid faith in the power of the Lord.
As you prepare to dream each night and you think about where the country is, where it was when you helped begin leading and serving 40 plus years ago, and you think about where it's going next, what is your thought around where our nation heads next?
Well, we have to fight for this idea of objective truth. The loss of objective truth and the loss of faith, which provides the guidelines for objective truth, which then results in the ability of all of us to understand our responsibility to ourselves and to others. Something has to happen there because we're just going to continue to drift into chaos. I am hopeful because I think that the Lord, just like he did with the movement after the Gilded Age, he sort of got him somehow through people. He got himself involved in that social gospel movement, which changed the culture from an I to a we culture. We need to get into that again, but I think it's going to take some sort of a spiritual awakening. I don't know what it looks like. I thought maybe when the Pope was confirmed, people were joyous around the world at his selection. I was thinking that might have been a spark and may still be. I don't know, but I do believe we need something greater than ourselves. But we'll be the instruments of that change, in my opinion. We as human beings will be the instrument. We just got to listen to what we might be told to do.
You've been getting feedback now and notes from folks who have read the book. Is there one story that's moved you more than the others?
I have to tell you, the lady at Long Island has been persistent in the fact that she's excited about what she was able to accomplish and the fact that she's in the book. And Sister Mary down there in Philadelphia, $100 million nun, as I like to call her.
She is.
Yeah,
if I had to imagine her word, like her word over her head, it's fierce. That woman is fierce.
Think about this. It's cold night, right? And they see this open government building, and she sticks her foot in before they can close it and says, I have a lot of people out here freezing. Let them in here. She was introduced to me by a CEO of a bank here who's really a great leader, and he just loves her. He says that she is a force.
Yeah.
And when I talked last time I talked to her, I was saying, sister, you have these people that come out of their homes just to see you, just to touch you, to shake your hand. She goes, I'm so lucky to know these people. I mean, it's great. It's something that I could use a bigger dose of, which is called humility. She just has it in spades, John. And I want to also say here, and I know you don't want me to do this, but I'm doing it anyway, unless you cut me out of this thing.
Just delete this later
Your
on. Go ahead and
your
say it.
your accomplishments are amazing, and how you just hung in there and all kinds of horrible things, and yet you're an amazing man. I can't thank you enough for having an interest in what I've done here.
Well, what you're doing is shining a light where it needs to be shined next, which is ordinary people stepping forward, leading into their faith and drawing forward others with them. So I love the book. I love the work you did in sharing it. And now, my friend, we get to move into what we call the Live Inspired Seven. So I know you're relatively familiar with fast-paced questions coming at you, Governor, but here we go. Get ready, buckle up. What's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
Well, I would say right now it's a book by Helmut Thielicke that's written about the power of the Lord's Prayer. But then you have the Divine Conspiracy, which is another incredible book by Dallas Willard, and then Surprised by Hope, which is an incredible book by N.T. Wright. These are just very powerful, very, very powerful books, and that of course doesn't include the Hardy Boys.
Keep it real, man. What is one positive characteristic or one trait you possess growing up outside of Pittsburgh that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today?
Oh, I don't know how to answer that. These are tough questions. Hopefully the little boy of Johnny Kasich is not dying inside of grown-up John Kasich. That's what I want.
We'll keep writing on the shopping cart.
Lionel Richie told me some years ago, not that many years ago, within a few years ago, he's the one that told me, "Don't ever let the little boy die inside of you." And I think that's just great philosophy. And Al Pacino told me not to be a name dropper, but I just, what can
I
I
was about
tell
to
you?
say that. Kasich has just dropped Bono, Lionel Richie. I don't even know who these people are
Well,
anymore.
what happened was I met Lionel Richie in Colorado at a speaking engagement, and he sees me, comes up to me, he says, "You're like James Bond. Every time they try to corner you, you always slip out."
Hilarious. If your home caught fire and all
Ugh.
living things, all people are out, you have an opportunity now, Governor, of running in and grabbing one item. What's that one physical thing you would come racing back outside?
That's such a great question. There's nothing that stands out since they're all out
Hmm.
that I would say I need this or that. I can't think of one single thing in there that I could say a Bible or something like that, but no, I don't know. I don't have there's not one that jumps out. Not one. Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that because I would imagine you have heirloom upon heirloom. They sat upon your desk in DC and then again in Columbus.
I don't keep a lot of that political stuff around, so there's nothing. Maybe I would grab one thing that back when I was first starting in politics, I created this phony organization called the Citizens Committee on Energy. And I did it just to see if I could organize and get people to show up for stuff. And a friend of mine found a flyer from that, which would have been in 1976 or 7. And he put it in a little frame and gave it to me. I might grab that because that's we laugh at it to this very, very day. I want to show you something. I don't know if you could see this, but one of my best friends for 50 years, I'm going to have when I just had my birthday and my family asked, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, my dear friend and I have been friends for 50 years, and I want to have a dinner with him and his wife and Karen and me." And on Saturday, I was with him, and he is a big fan of Archie Griffin, who is the great football player. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I took a special picture of he and Archie.
I'll let you describe it to our audience. Some of them are viewing us, others are listening. So tell them
Well,
about the
it's
picture.
from like their necks down. You can see their shorts and their shoes, but you can't see them on their face. And we have been laughing about that since I took this picture. And one young lady saw this picture and she looked at me. She said, "You need to get better at photography."
That's awesome. So we are down to the wire, running through three more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day with that picture in one hand and the flyer in the other, and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would
Oh, well, Jesus, of course.
it be?
Well, and aside of Jesus, John the Baptist would be interesting. Paul would be very interesting. I would say Abraham Lincoln would be very interesting. I mean, those are the kinds that I would think about.
Those are big names. What's the best advice any of those guys or anyone else ever gave you? So the best advice Governor John Kasich ever received is
Johnny, just always do the right thing, make things a little better.
from your dad.
Both of them.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self? So this Ohio State kid getting ready to launch into the world, what does he need to hear?
You're doing great, kid, but try to slow down a little bit and listen a little bit more.
Governor John Kasich, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
Oh boy. I mean, I think I might say something like, of course, loved his family and his friends, and he was kind.
Hmm. Not always nice, but he most certainly loved his family and his friends. Governor John Kasich, I appreciate you loving your family and your friends and always being kind.
John, thank you so much.
My friends, that is the voice and the life story of my friend John Kasich. He is the author of the book Heaven Help Us. My name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift. Live inspired.
Well, my friends, if there's one thing that I am taking away from this conversation with former Governor John Kasich, it is that real change doesn't start in D.C. or Columbus, Ohio, or Jefferson City, or Sacramento, California, or whatever your state capital might be. It starts in your own backyard. Stop waiting for the White House to make your house a better place, in other words. It starts when we notice a need in our neighborhood and have the courage, the audacity to step into it. It starts when we believe that faith and love and community can still create radical change that elevates the world around us. If you enjoyed today's episode, you'll love my conversation with Florence Ann Romano. She's an author, she's an advocate who shared with me on the podcast how we can build villages that change the world. You'll love it. We'll talk about support and connection and trust. And if you've ever felt lonely in a crowd or unsure where to turn to help or to be helped, check out episode with Florence Ann Romano at episode 544 right now in the Live Inspired podcast, or by just cruising with me over to johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. Well, leaders, Republicans, Democrats, independents, fellow human beings, I appreciate you tuning in this time. And until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift. Live inspired.
Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son, Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.